Yes.
Good morning. I'm on the West Coast.
Yeah, so while we're letting folks kind of file in here, welcome to another QB Power Hour. Today is with a little bit of a pivot. We were originally going to have folks from Intuit joining us. We're talking about desktop migration, some best practices. We do a demo, but what's actually happening this week at Intuit is an accountant council. So that's taking a few resources away that would have been helping us with this webinar. So we pivoted a little bit, and we're actually going to be doing an exercise that they're going to be doing at the accountant council this week, right? So we'll be talking about desktop features that are desktop features that aren't in online. This is a feedback session. So this is going to be a little bit different of a workshop for us in that it's not necessarily just talking about some tips and tricks and things to do inside of QuickBooks. This is actually almost a working session live, and In has graciously joined us here today so that we can kind of facilitate this whole session. Michelle, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Long, CPA with an MBA in entrepreneurship, owner of Long for Success. Very glad to have you all joining us today, and glad to have in here and doing this workshop kind of exercise with you all. You get some insight into how Intuit really does listen to our feedback, and then how they kind of take our feedback and try to process that and rank it and get more information. So I just think this is going to be a fun session today, and I'm glad we're doing it. It's always kind of fun to do these things.
Yeah, my name is Dan DeLong, your co-host today. Worked at Intuit, not within, but at Intuit for nearly 18 years. Your co-host today. Also, we do a workshop Wednesdays for schoolbookkeeping.com, and just was asked to do the technical editing for the QBO for Dummies series, upcoming 8th edition. So lovely doing that as well. In, you want to give us a little bit of introduction to you? You've joined us before, so go ahead and reintroduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is In. I'm a product manager with the QuickBooks Online accounting team. As a product manager, my favorite part and the most important part of my job is to listening to our users, like the accounts. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have today.
Awesome. Well, a little bit of the details about the QB Power Hour webinars are every other Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern. We have some upcoming webinars. Unfortunately, they are not eligible for CPE, so don't ask us for about that. But we are kind of working on maybe some options to be able to make that happen, but that'll be in the future. So our next webinar, we're actually going to be continuing our Niche Nuance series, which is convenience stores and gas stations with Alicia Katz-Pollock. She has developed a resource for convenience stores and gas stations. And then we'll be talking, bookkeeper will be coming back and talking about managing multiple payment methods across sales channels. So that's a mouthful to say, but it is a mouthful to do when you're dealing with things like Stripe and PayPal on different sales channels and best practices. And we're actually going to have Don Brolin joining us as well. So she'll be joining us on that Power Hour as well. And then we'll do a deep dive into Practice Ignition, the next one after that.
Ignition now, not Practice Ignition.
Oh yeah, right.
Ignition
Just
now.
Ignition. Right.
I can't stop saying Practice Ignition, but yes,
I'll have to put it in parentheses. So that we can realize the drop is coming if it's not already. And then if you need some PDF of the slides, the recordings, the podcast, we've built a web page on qbpowerhour.com/resources where you can access all of those prior webinars, listen to the podcast right there online, or subscribe to the podcast of choice. We also have some website updates to announce. We have a section for the upcoming events, so you can scroll down on the main homepage and see what's coming up. Add it to your Google Calendar right there from the website. Also, additional QB webinars, so things like the In the Know webinar that Intuit does every so often. You can register for that. as well as some other friends that we work with, like Hector will have his webinars available there as well. So it's kind of a one-stop shop so that you can sign up for upcoming webinars, not just the QB Power Hour. So a little bit of the housekeeping today. If you haven't noticed, we've disabled the chat today. And the reason being is that we want to make sure that we collect and capture all of your great feedback today. And so the only way to post a question is using the QA. And what that actually will allow us to do is, if we can't answer it live within or through ourselves, Michelle or myself, if we can't speak to it live, they'll be able to follow up and then reach back out to you via email to be able to follow up with that conversation. So if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the Q&A, and then we can either respond to them live or through typing. And then also we have the handouts and the webinar archive links in the chat. I'm sorry, in the links there. And I'm going to put in the Q&A. I'm going to put in, let's see, our slides and landing page that we have here today. Somebody's got to type me something. Can somebody put something in the Q&A so that I can respond to it? There we go. Thank you, Linda. Oh, now everybody's doing it. All right. There is the slides, the handouts, and the links for today. So you should be able to see those in the Q&A at the moment. So let's start off with, I'm going all over the place here, with our first poll. And that first poll is, what version of QuickBooks do you support for your clients? Since we'll be talking primarily about desktop and online, we will kind of focus our attention on those, but we want to get an understanding of all of the accounting software that you might be utilizing in your practice, not just with those two main things. I know, Michelle, you adopted QuickBooks Online pretty early on, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, early for, I guess, considering that most accountants weren't there yet, but actually a lot of people may not realize QBO actually started in 2001. I mean, so QBO has been around for a long time, and I was not an early adopter because I didn't like it. I tried it and I didn't like it, but then I can't remember what year it was when they had Harmony, when they kind of revamped QBO and they redid it and kind of a relaunch almost, if you will. Once that happened, then I did start finally using QBO, because that's where I saw where Intuit was going, and that's where all the resources and all the emphasis was going into QBO. And so I did start learning more about it, but that was probably, gosh, I can't remember when that was, at least 10 years ago. But no, I wasn't an early from like early 2000s. But
yeah,
anyway.
That's an interesting fun fact, I think, about QBO, is that it is 21, 22 years old. And it just kind of puts some perspective about QBO when you think of it being that old, right? Like some of the things, think of what the internet was like back then, right? I mean, primarily dial-up, was the way that people connected online. So, the speed of which things were being handled and done online. And, that's where, the main target of QuickBooks Online was service-based industries, so things, tracking inventory, and the job costing, all of the things that you hear about, QuickBooks Online doesn't do very well, were based and born in that environment. You look at other accounting software that might have been born in online, those things are easier, I guess, is that easier to work with, because that's where they're built on. And So let me go ahead.
One of the things though, Dan, and I think we really realize this with the whole, COVID, work from home, all that. Intuit pushed us kicking and screaming because accountants don't like change. We like things to stay the same forever. But at Intuit, I mean, we were doing freedom in the cloud webinars 10 years before this whole COVID thing happened, and all of a sudden everybody had to go to the cloud and learn how to work remotely and things. And from our perspective, Intuit had us positioned ready to go when that happened, because we were talking about firm of the future and working remotely and all this well before the pandemic. So Intuit pushes us where the industry and where technology is going. And so I always think that's kind of cool. So anyway. Yeah. My two cents.
So Ian, go ahead and kind of walk us through, this exercise and what it is that we're going to be doing for the rest of the Power 49 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So just like Dan and Michelle has mentioned, we know we have heard many times that there exists a significant gap between QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. And even though we have made a lot of investment on QuickBooks Online, so the gap has been decreasing, but this gap is still substantial. So today, what we're gonna do is I have prepared a survey for you, and Intuit really wants to listen to you, and we want to really hear your feedback. So what we're going to do, so in this survey, I have listed out 16 most commonly mentioned feature gaps between QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. And I'm going to ask you to rank those features in the order of impact to you. So what are the most important feature gaps? If they were close, it will improve your practice and how efficiently you can provide your service to your clients. I think we can move on.
And then we're actually going to tally the results live so that we can have like maybe a discussion afterwards and maybe dissect a little bit. So, so I mean, when I worked at Intuit, I remember having countless conversations about the disparity between, it was a common thing where I'd be talking with accountants who do both, QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online, and they would say, it doesn't work this way in QuickBooks Online, or in Desktop it does this, or something like that. Yeah. And that was always, there was a gap, right, between what QuickBooks Desktop does and what QuickBooks Online does. And one of the things that really made it, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, but one of the things that kind of put everything into perspective for me is because of the age, of QuickBooks Online and what it was built on at that time. Sometimes, you make a decision when it comes to developing things. Do I scrap everything, start over, or do I build on top of what's already there? And sometimes it makes sense to scrap and start over and completely rebuild. I mean, if you recall anything about sales form customization, which is still an outcry or a big talking point about customizing your sales form. That was a big initiative where, all right, we got to start over with customizing sales forms, and that means that you can barely do anything at first, but you have that framework or that groundwork to build on, and then you can build on more things. Well, as feedback is, you discover that, oh, maybe you're headed in the wrong direction, or I need more of that. And then they got to reevaluate, okay, we're going to need to scrap it again, rather than, building on something that is continuing to lean to one side. You end up, okay, well, we've got to start over. And then unfortunately, when you start over, then you're very limited on what you can do. But because you have that good foundation, you're able to build better. Right. So some of the things that you may have seen or heard of or have a bone to pick, or as Hector says, drives you bonkers when it comes to QuickBooks Online. Things about inventory, job costing, reporting. I've seen some things fly by about what about payroll and job costing and those types of things, and some key main pain points. And that's what we're going to kind of unpack here is, some of those pain points that when you say, okay, I like my desktop to do this, and I want QuickBooks Online to do that, or this is prohibiting me from moving my QuickBooks clients from desktop to online because of the way it's handled. That's what we're going to try to unpack here today. So we're going to collect some feedback and the feature gaps that are most important to you, right? So talk a little bit about the feedback process and what that actually, how important that is to Intuit, right? Like the follow me home. Like, can you talk a little bit about the follow me home? It sounds a little stalkerish, but how did that begin?
Yeah, absolutely. So Intuit is a very customer-driven company, and really the whole idea of customer-driven innovation really traces back to the really foundation of the company. So the founder of the company, Scott Koo, when he started the company, one of the things that he did is that he actually back in the days where they're selling TurboTax and QuickBooks through CD-ROMs, like CD disk. Scott Koo will wait on the stores and for the customers to buy those CD-ROMs, and they'll ask them to follow to their homes and then actually observe how the users will use the program. So that's really the genesis of the whole concept of customer-driven innovation, and it still rings true for the company to this day. So how are we going to use the feedback? So the customer feedback and the data from the users are the single most important, powerful ways to really vouch for the features and determine which features and which projects we want to work on. So once we collect this feedback, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up to our leadership team and different product teams. And I'm going to say, hey, these are the features that we need to work on our next quarter or the following years. So again, we really want to listen to you. Your feedback is the single most important data evidence that I can bring to the team, so that we can make sure that we work on the features and the features that are most important to you and your clients.
So you can, obviously you can't click on the webinar screen here to get to the SurveyMonkey link that's showing here on the screen. But if you look in the Q&A, you should be able to see my response to Linda about that'll take you to the feedback session, right? And I'm going to share this over here. When we don't want that, then we want over here. So this is where it will take you, right? Which is the feedback session. The replay will be here on our website. You can access the handouts here, but you want to click on the submit feedback button, right? And what that will do is it will bring this up. I've already submitted the feedback, so I can't submit it twice, which is good. You can't stuff the ballot box here, right? So only one person at a time. But when that comes up, then what you'll see is a list of 16. Let me go back here. You'll see a list of 16 features that don't exist as they are listed here in QuickBooks Online. I mean, you may say, well, inventory is an option in QuickBooks Online, but your advanced inventory tracking, like the multiple sites or the reporting, right? Like you can't run inventory reports on a cash basis in QuickBooks Online. Some of those things that exist in desktop the way they are today, what are they? How are they in online, right? The batch transactions, bulk and batch invoicing, for invoice checks and bills, right? So you can do some of these things in advance, but not all versions, right? Maybe an accountant tool would be useful for that, right? Custom roles. So let's talk a little bit about some of these things here. So sales orders. This is a big bone to pick with some people. Michelle, what would you say is the main the main thing about sales orders that you can't do in QuickBooks Online.
Well, let me make sure I'm not muted. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was muting myself. Well, one of the things that we hear most frequently is whenever there's back orders or partial orders and things like that, because instead of doing a sales order, you can do an estimate in QBO, but it doesn't allow for tracking back order situations and partial fulfillment and things like that. And so that's where some people still want the ability to have that sales order so they can do open and partial shipping situations.
Yeah, like the main function of a sales order, in my opinion, is to reduce the available quantity of an item, right? So if you've got 10 on the shelf and you promise one to a customer, you don't want that one to be sold out from underneath that customer. That would be a bad customer experience. Or to your in your example, right, to tracking the back orders, right? Because maybe you don't have it on the shelf, but you want to custom order it. Sales orders allow you to do that. Now that is a Premier feature, right? So that's something that is available in Premier and higher. So you don't even have to have Enterprise, the big flagship desktop product, to even have that functionality. But it's somewhere between an estimate or quote and an invoice where you've actually billed for it. So, but it actually pulls away some of the available quantity, and that's, I think, the biggest takeaway of a sales order, and maybe prohibiting people from moving their desktop clients to that. Because what happens right now, if and do you know offhand? I mean, I'm throwing you a curve here, but what happens right now if they have a sales order in Premier and they go to desktop, or from desktop to online? What happens to those sales orders? They just not come over?
I actually did not know the answer to that, but
oh no, okay, I did throw you a quick question there. I'll try to look it up, but I don't remember offhand either. So custom roles. Let's talk a little bit about custom roles. So Advanced has the advertisement, right, of greater QuickBooks Online Advanced has a greater flexibility when it comes to roles and customization of that. But if you compare that to Enterprise, it is severely lacking, right? And if you're doing things in if you're living in QuickBooks as your ecosystem for access to QuickBooks, the customization of roles becomes a higher priority, right? Because you don't want any of these people to see your payroll. If you're integrating a payroll, and you can turn things on or off and things like that. But I always compare things to a light switch, right? It's either on or off. But if you look at the ability that you can do in Enterprise, you can get really granular, to the access points that you can allow or not allow with regards to that.
Well, and Dan, one of the things I would add along with the custom roles and user permissions and stuff is that has to flow through to the mobile app. Because with the mobile app, when you log in on the mobile app, you can see the balance sheet and the P&L. It doesn't honor the user restrictions that you may have set up to passwords. At least it didn't. I haven't checked that lately. So that's something as well, is that if we are having custom user roles, it has to flow through and be honored by the mobile app as well. Right.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I see a lot of feedback online, like, well, I got to make them a company admin, in order to use this one feature in the app. But now they see everything, right? So that's always a consideration, which is not typically a consideration for desktop, because there's not much you can do in the app. I mean, they're building more around that. Sales form customization. We've already kind of talked about this, but desktop has the layout designer, right, where you can get super granular. If you want this field to be, 2 millimeters smushed to the, pushed to the right, or you can really get granular with that. Can you speak a little bit about maybe like the journey of sales form customization, like where it's at now and where you'd like it to go, or where Intuit would like it to go?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm not the product owners of this in the each individual feature, but what I do know is that there's some sales form customization feature functionality available in QuickBooks Online as well. But we have heard feedback that it's not on par with what you could do on QuickBooks Desktop Layout Designer. So that's the part of the feedback that we're looking for today.
Now, I have also seen that I've also heard the other side, like people who have gone into the layout designer inside a desktop, they look at that and they see, well, I mean, it hasn't been touched in probably a couple decades, is that it looks old, right? And that is, so with, great robust functionality, comes this, the double edge of that sword is, oh yeah, it looks a little clunky, so perfect world, perfect scenario is you have all the functionality of the desktop layout designer, but the new look and feel of inside of QuickBooks Online. Job costing. This is a big, hairy thing. I mean, can you speak to in the journey of job costing, because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Because it's a nebulous thing. But I did see someone say about job costing from payroll would be wonderful, and that's kind of what you've illustrated here about calculating payroll expenses for projects. Can you speak a little bit to that? Like what it is that they're looking for?
The feedback we have been hearing is that with the desktop, you could do more granular job costing, and you can also do percentage-based job costing. But on QuickBooks Online, most of those features are not available. So this is especially these features especially pertinent to the bigger companies and also the firms that does constructions or project-based services. So yeah, that's the job costing.
And that kind of leads into, oh, go ahead, Michelle.
I was just going to say, I would add there, though, on the job costing is they do in the project center now, you have the ability, if you're using QBO payroll, it will allocate the actual payroll costs to the project, if you've assigned a project and stuff. So when you're using the QBO payroll, it does that. When you're not, let's say you're paying subcontractors and you want to allocate their time in the project center, there's a place where you can set up what the hourly cost is and have it calculating, if the base cost is $15 an hour, plus this for taxes, plus this for workers' comp, plus this for an admin and overhead allocation rate. So you can assign an hourly cost rate that you want to apply to those jobs so they can estimate fully burdened costs. So it's come a long way on the job costing aspect there, but it's still not as robust as some people would like. As far as the reports, that's always a big thing, is they want more reporting capabilities.
Yeah, originally, and this was one of those things of what it was built on, right? Originally, billing by customer was the feature inside of QuickBooks that kind of evolved into projects, right? So being able to put an expense and tag a customer to it, so that the original goal was that feature would then, that expense will be able to be billed back to your customer, which that's the foundation that allows for expense tracking versus the income. So you can track reimbursable expenses and those types of things. But originally, that's one of those things where they were starting to build, and then it just kind of went a little sideways when you now look and compare what you can do as far as job costing in desktop versus what you can do in job costing in QuickBooks Online. So I think in some cases, you could see like the project center and the profitability center that's in the projects. Not in the projects, but in the projects tab, is it looks a lot nicer in QuickBooks Online. But again, to your point, Michelle, you want to dig deep. Accountants want to dig a little deeper. Customers and contractors want to dig deeper. It's when you get past that superficial, overarching profitability of a project to get into the underlying factor of that. Then it becomes, okay, this is what we need really more robustness around. And that segues nicely because a lot of contractors who are using the projects are also using progress invoice. Now you can, invoice for a percentage of your estimate to invoice, but once you do that, that estimate is closed, right? So now it becomes I've got to copy my estimate. Now I've got multiple estimates for one job. Again, the common thread is that's not the way it does it in desktop, right? So that remaining unbilled balance on an estimate turned into an invoice can be then billed again. So you can do, a third, like most contractors will do. That's what we're talking about with the progress invoice. Item receipts, that is just something that doesn't exist in QuickBooks Online, right? And an item receipt is you've received merchandise, but you haven't been billed for it yet. I've got a bone to pick about how desktop handles item receipts because it posts. It's still, is a when I talk to people about what is an item receipt, it's really a bill that you can't pay. It still has the same impact financially on the books, unless you're using the enhanced receiving in enterprise. But buyer beware, careful when you turn that on. That's one of those things that you can't turn back off if you decide to use it that way, because now you have to utilize that. And that's another whole nother webinar on enhanced receiving. But item receipt is I've received the merchandise, but I haven't got the bill yet. The bill comes later. That functionality doesn't exist in QuickBooks Online. I think what happens is those item receipts, if you do have any item receipts in desktop and they go to online, they turn into bills, which then becomes another issue. Now, custom fields. QuickBooks Online Advanced has made some pretty good advancements in custom fields, but you still can't put custom fields on a line item. So that is what we're talking about with custom fields. I think this is one of those situations where online features are actually, jumping over what can be done in desktop, but you have that Achilles heel of you can't put it on an item. So if you get it to items, I think this will make it that much more better. And anytime you look at any of these things, the customizations, that's where QuickBooks then becomes adaptable for specific businesses. So you can really get use of these features. So the sales form customization of roles, custom fields, that's where when you're saying the main caveat of, oh, it doesn't fit my business. Well, this is where you can actually dive pretty deep into that and make it work for most businesses, not necessarily all.
Dan, one of the things that is nice about QBO that a lot of people don't realize is, let's say you put something in that item description, because I agree, custom fields are big and you get them with advanced, but a lot of people don't have QBO advanced. But one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is if you put something in the item description, you can search based on the item description. When you're in your little custom search field, if you go to the advanced search, you can search by line description. And I think that's got a lot of powerful uses. If you had the custom fields, you wouldn't have to do that. But that is a workaround that a lot of people will use, is putting it in that line description.
Good call out.
Yeah.
Backing up. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to make one comment. So custom fields, they're actually available on QuickBooks Online Accountant as well. So that was the latest improvement that we made. But still, so you can use custom fields for vendors and clients and so on. But just like Dan, you mentioned, there's still some gaps that like the customization that you could do on desktop that you could not do on online. So if you have any those like specific feedback that you like to provide for these features, in the survey, there's a response, like the open-ended response that you can also give. So please add comments there.
Yeah, and that's a good call out. And the survey, in addition to ranking, stack ranking these features or functionalities, you can put a free text comment, right? So your feedback is tied to your response, so you can provide more clarity as to maybe why that you did one over the other. And that brings up another good point, is that maybe your niche is contractors, right? And you have built a whole practice around desktop job costing, and those features just don't exist. And you'll go kicking and screaming to QuickBooks Online because those functions just don't exist. That feedback is really valuable, but maybe because you don't use online as much as some other practitioners, you're just not able to be in it as much as somebody who is, right? So put that in the comments as well, is that these things are showstoppers or game deal breakers. That's the word I was looking for. That I can't move anyone to QuickBooks Online because this feature doesn't exist. Now, backing up the company is something that when I was working there, I always saw this as I don't know, it was kind of like the debt ceiling in politics, because QuickBooks Online data just continues to grow and grow and grow, and there's not really a purging option or scaling back. Can you speak a little bit to that, as far as backing up the company? Obviously, restore point is one of those things, but another aspect is the size of company files. Is that a concern for an online product like this, where it just is, as companies use it, and let's say they're now 7+ years, they're past the point of where they need to keep those active. If they, if you're talking for a compliance standpoint, what's happening? Are they just going to buy more space, or what is? how's that work?
It would be nice to condense, like we could do in desktop, to get rid of some of the old stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So for backup company in QuickBooks Online, let's say advanced feature, there's no ability to condense your company file. What backup company can do is you can go back to a certain time in the past, and you can restore your company file to that point. But yeah, it's a really interesting question, because I heard feedback from the desktop users that as their practice grows, their company file sometimes becomes too large and it becomes unmanageable. And yeah, I would love to hear more about whether there's like similar issues happening with online. But yeah.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that I see happening is the limitations that are being set arbitrarily, right? Like you can only run certain reports or do a search for the past 2 years, right? Because there's now too much data for it to function properly. Or if you try to send a general ledger report to Excel, it times out because that report is too big. So these growing pains of your company file are either being handled for you by a limitation in search or functionality, or you can't do some of the things that you want to do, like the customization or the custom report builder that's in Online Advanced. You can only do 1 year, right? I mean, that's it's a great tool, but you can only do 1 year because, it's so, it would take more resources away, or it would time out, or, there's a practical limitation to doing these things in online, as opposed to a physical, limitation of like, you can have unlimited customers, but when you do this, then it's gonna, cause a problem. So, and I do want to speak a little bit to, with backing up data. That's one of the things that I like about QuickBooks Online, is that you rarely see data damage like you do in desktop. I mean, when I worked at Intuit, data corruption issues in online, because the larger they are, the harder they fall. You have a large company file in Enterprise or on Pro or Premier, it's inevitable that something will happen and it will damage the data. You just don't have that. You have issues, don't get me wrong. I mean, you have certain issues, but you don't have widespread corruption issues. I always get a kick out of people who get hijacked by some of the bad actors that are out there that say, "Oh, your QuickBooks Online is 33% corrupt." I'm like, how do you know that? Right? That's just like a red flag to me. But
Hey, Dan, I just want to do a quick check. So I was looking at the survey result, and we have 30 responses so far. I just want to make sure that everyone has access to the survey and they know which link they need to use to access the survey.
So that is here, right? So you go to this. I'll put it again in the, and I'll just pick someone's. Let's see. I'll do this again here. Answer. I responded again to Linda's original. In the Q&A, if you look at the answers, there should be the link there to the landing page, and then you can click on the submit feedback, and then that will take you to be able to do the feedback. So yeah, let's see, we have what? Oh, we have 140, almost a couple hundred people live on the webinar. So the more people that put in the feedback will give us a better understanding of the consensus of which direction to head. So definitely, please do that while we're talking through some of these features here.
So I was just going to make a comment here. Jean had a comment: education about the safety of data on your servers. I can back up desktop and take it home. I depend on QB for QBO. So, I hear this a lot about the question of the safety, and I want to back it up and take it home and stuff. The reality is, and a lot of people don't stop to think about it, the QuickBooks Desktop is more vulnerable to hacking than QBO is. Intuit has the same bank level security that banks and credit cards do and things like that. The data is actually safer in the cloud on Intuit servers than it is on your home computer. We can't spend millions of dollars on the security that Intuit does. And so that's one of the things that, sometimes these small business owners don't realize it. But, where does the IRS store your tax returns? In the cloud. Where's your banking? In the cloud. Where's your healthcare? In the cloud. Everything's in the cloud already. Every time you use a credit card, your data is in the cloud, if you will. So the reality is things are more secure in the cloud on Intuit servers than they are, taking the backup and having it on your own computer. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that and get your comments as well on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing up. So, security and customer data, customer privacy are the utmost importance to Intuit. So we spend a lot of money, make a lot of investment on making sure that our customer data stays safe. So we have a pretty secure infrastructure to enable that. So you can be rest assured that your data is going to be safer when your data is on cloud.
Yeah, and I saw so many unsecure practices when talking to some accountants and people using desktop. Like, for example, if you're using credit card processing in desktop, you have to change your password every 90 days, and everybody has to change their password every 90 days. the outcry of of having to change your password. I mean, that's a security. It actually re-encrypts the data, does a lot of great things when you do that, but it is annoying when you have to change your password every 90 days and then remember your client's password on top of all of that. So it does get a little cumbersome, to say the least. But yeah, I mean, to Ian's point, yes, the backing up of company data does allow you to do a restore point, where you could say, okay, I totally screwed up today. I want to go back to yesterday.
Right.
That is the backup company process. But there actually is a redundant backup process when you save something, right? So when you save save an invoice today, it's actually immediately saved somewhere else, right? So that's why you have less data corruption issues with QuickBooks Online, is because they have redundant backups of your cloud, but it's live data, right? So to your point of wanting to be able to go back to yesterday or a week ago or the day before, that's what they're talking about with the backing up of the company data. Reports, that is, I mean, to Michelle's point, reports is where you get, you make meaning of the data, right? And being able to do custom reports. I mean, the fact that there is still not a custom summary report like there is in desktop is just that's a Hector Bunkers thing, right? To be able to make your own custom reports is a bit of a challenge. Now, I added the sales tax center because when I posted asking for feedback on the QB Power User Facebook group, this was a big thing. The sales tax, and then we want to talk a little bit about it, right? The way that QuickBooks Online handles setting up sales tax is, I mean, it's apples and oranges when you're talking about desktop and online, right? So we talked about this a little last time when we had Avaletta on. In QuickBooks Desktop, you're setting things up as items and sales tax groups, and you can use a lot of the line item functionality in desktop to make sure that your sales tax is collected properly. And because you're using that foundation of items and groups, components, client, combining things together, those items flow through to reports pretty great, right? So your sales tax liability report, you'll be able to dissect. You can dive into most of the numbers that are on that sales tax liability report to be able to have confidence that this is what I need to use to help fill out and file and pay my sales tax in QuickBooks Desktop. Online focuses mostly on its sales tax on the chart of accounts. There is no such thing as an item for sales tax inside of QuickBooks. Now, the flip side of that is it's automated, right? So as soon as you put in your jurisdiction and where you're located and where the customer is located, after that, everything as far as the collection of the sales tax on the sales transaction itself is pretty well automated, right? And if you have a discrepancy, you can change the way that things are right there on the transaction itself. But that's where sales tax kind of ends for me in QuickBooks Online, right? Because what happens after that is it's a mess. I mean, sorry, and the confirming the number on reports is a little maddening for a lot of people, not just myself.
Well, and I agree with you, Dan. It is complex and it is frustrating. And you know how I feel about sales taxes. It has gotten so complex, and so many of these small businesses now are shipping things to other states, and they're creating nexus where they never realized it. And I feel strongly that if you got a company that's got sales taxes going on, you probably need to have help in this area to ensure that everything is set up properly and done properly. And it may require, not using Intuit's sales tax feature, but using something like Avatax from Avalara, because so many people don't realize, if they're selling on Amazon, Amazon has a warehouse like in every state now that can trigger Nexus for them. If they have so many sales in a particular state, that can trigger Nexus. So, I'm scared to let people try to do it on their own because they can get into so much trouble.
Yeah, I think Diana said it best here. QBO sales tax is a piece of poopy dookie.
Oh, so yeah.
So you want to probably
Technical.
unpack that in
Technical term.
No, yeah. Like you hit the nail on the head, and like we are aware that there's still a gap, and we have lots of improvements we need to make on with QuickBooks Online. So like we really appreciate all the feedback and comments. So like keep the comments coming. You can use the Q&A on Zoom, or you can also give additional comments through the survey as well. So yeah, I'll make sure that I collect all of this feedback and bring it back to our internal teams.
Seeing some great comments in the Q&A, not just the poopy dookie one, but
so please keep it coming.
Really constructive, and that is fantastic.
Absolutely, yep.
And here's another. I don't know if it's a fun fact, right? But the functionality that finds its way into QuickBooks Online is oftentimes the result of an acquisition, right? So if you want to look at, and I'll jump right down to payroll, right? Because if you look at the reports in payroll, as opposed to all the other reports inside of QuickBooks Online, they're vastly different, right? And that's because it came from the PayCycle acquisition, right? So QBO payroll was all based off of a company that Intuit purchased and then incorporated that into the mix of QuickBooks Online. The inventory functionality came from an acquisition of lettuce. I think it was cabbage, it was some kind of vegetable that was purchased. The sales tax automation came from a company that was acquired. So, right. So these things are just going to, the technology as it gets integrated, sometimes things are a little off, right? So that's one of the things to kind of consider, right? Whereas QuickBooks Desktop, it was just built on, from the ground up and then added to. So everything kind of looks cohesive, kind of across the board. So the audit trail, this was another big feedback collector. When I put the information out, the audit trail is something that a lot of accountants and bookkeepers, especially, are using to help do a lot of the detective work when it comes to, okay, who did what when, right? And the audit trail inside of Desktop has a greater searchable, filterable functionality. Wow, that's a mouthful. And you just don't have that in online. There are some things that you can do in online, and there are things but you can't go back more than 2 years, I think, right? So it's exporting it to Excel is not an option, those types of things. Whereas the audit trail report in Desktop is a built-in report. Every report in Desktop can be sent to Excel. You'll have the latest iteration of the transaction and the prior right below it, right there on it, and you'll be able to use the date filters of the transaction date plus the entered modified date in conjunction to be able to see that. I mean, that's something that is really, just having that, being able to, I want to search for transactions that are dated this but modified today. That would be a great thing inside of the audit trail report.
So, but Dan, let me ask you this, because in the QBO audit trail audit log, you can click to see a comparison, what it was before and what it was after, and it'll highlight what it was before and what it is after. So you can show the changes only, so you can only see that. And it tracks everything, whereas desktop only tracked the transactions. QBO will track if somebody reconciled an account, if they added a new account, if they changed the account on a product or service item, if they changed the mappings or something. I mean, I kind of thought the QBO audit log was a lot better than the desktop.
Yeah, when I first looked at it too, I was like, what you can do, I mean, you can see when somebody signed in, you can see when, somebody changed a product or service or edited, added an account. And to your point, you can see the entire history of that one thing by drilling in on it. And that was really one of the feedback. They want a middle ground. They want the good things in the QuickBooks Online audit trail and the desktop audit trail. So like, I don't think there's any one winner in this, but there is a unified one that I think would be awesome.
So here's what I would like, and it's kind of audit trail user permissions combined, but I want an audit user. So let's say you're having an audit by the IRS, right? We don't want to allow them to look at everything. I would like where the IRS or the auditor can look at only this period of time, like the year that's under audit and the month before and the month after, so that they can go in and do the audit without having full access. So I would like an audit user that's read-only access for a specific period of time. So I don't know
behind that too.
I don't know which one that would fall into on this list here, but I want an audit user.
Yeah, because I talked to the SEC once, and they were getting a lot of audits and things from the and people were very leery, I guess is the best of, because if you wanted to do certain things, you had to be a company admin. They don't want to give an auditor company admin access to their live books, right? So, these kind of things kind of fall into like, making a backup, giving it to, a user outside of their live books. That's a situation that would fall into, an issue where you might want to not do something like that to somebody who has that kind of access. Add, edit, list entries. This is a great feature inside a desktop where you can update customers kind of in an Excel spreadsheet fashion. It goes along with kind of like the batch transactions where, QuickBooks Online, can do batch transactions, but can't do editing and adding multiple list entries. And then, we're actually getting at the top of the hour here. We need to multi-company functionality is another thing. So being able to access multiple companies, that's one of the structural things that exists in QuickBooks Desktop, right? Is as long as you have storage on your hard drive, you can create as many entities as you like. Accountants and bookkeepers, I think that would be a huge win for them. And then we talked a little bit about the payroll. So let's share some results here. So let's see here. So I'm going to go in here and keep those things, those feedbacks coming. So here's the survey results. All right, let's make it here. Okay, so it's a pretty, I don't know, can you sort this in? Can you, it's almost a dead tie for a lot of these things.
I think there's a filter you can use, like down right, like bottom right corner, maybe.
Rules. No rules.
Custom reports is a big one. One of the things, the custom reports has gotten a lot better in QBO Advanced, but a lot of people don't have access to that.
I think custom reports and then job costing is the next thing. And then below that is batch transactions. So it's almost like a dead heat for these these three, and then sales orders. And then we got custom fields. And then the custom roles, or that may be a tie there for sales tax. So maybe sales tax is in there. So go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add one thing on this. I love that Intuit is listening to our comments and feedback. And people sometimes feel like Intuit doesn't listen. But I heard I don't remember who told us this at that accountant summit that Dan and I went to. Intuit gets like 60,000 feedback per month. When, if you go in the QBOA or whatever, you click on the gear, send feedback, they really do take all that feedback and listen to it and do like this and rank it and try to see where the priorities are and things like that. So people feel like, oh, they're not listening. They are listening. It just takes time, and things are prioritized based on how many people are requesting certain things. So, if you're one of the ones that really want item receipts here and that one's not highly requested, that's going to be lower on the list of getting anything done about it. So anyway.
Oh, that's a great point. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the comment, Michelle. So yeah, we absolutely want to hear, and we want to continue to get feedback from the customers. But again, like we know we're imperfect, and there are like lots of different things that we can do, but like too many, almost like more than what we can invest in. So it's important that we know the prioritization. So we have to know which ones are more important, like compared to other improvement areas. So yeah. That's very common.
Now, based off of, I'm just launching the last poll here before you start there. So looking at these results here, do you feel, those of you that are still on, do you feel that this is a good start, or this is way off, or is this not something is it something you're completely in agreement with? So while we're Michelle is wrapping up there, go ahead and answer that poll question.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh no.
I do remember what I was going to say. So Shane, I thought it's Shane Hamby. He was a product manager years ago, and I remember one year they rolled out that sliding out thing that would show you information about the customers or whatever. As you enter the customer name, it would slide out the drawer from the right-hand side and show you recent transactions and all that. And Shane said, this has been the #1 most requested feature for a long time. And we finally have it, this drawer that's going to slide out and show you information about the customer right as you're entering the invoice. So guess what? The next year, the most requested feature was turn it off. So the poor product managers can never win. Everybody's always requesting something, and then you give them that, and then they say, well, wait a minute, I don't like it after all. We're never happy. We always want more and additional features and changes. But I think it's great that Intuit keeps listening to us, and they do come out with great features for us. So we just need to keep telling them what we want.
And the big thing is that they're listening to a lot of people, right? So not just accountants, but also end users as well. They bring people into, and we saw that when we did our tour, they bring companies into like a lab and watch them use and interact with the software. So, they, to Ian's point, it is customer driven innovation. They want to make it right, but they have a lot of people to make it right for. So it is definitely, not an easy task to sort through all this feedback that they're getting and prioritize it. But I appreciate Ian for coming on here today. I appreciate everyone that took part in this, and I've seen some of the things that have been flying through here. We are going to send all of this feedback to Ian so that he gets to deal with it. And he might be reaching out to you to get a little bit more clarity about some of these things that you're providing for them today. So we appreciate you all joining us here today on the Power Hour. And thank you for pivoting and coming in on such short notice and running this feedback session right live on the webinar. And we'll leave up the survey. So if you as a user, go into the QB Power Hour, if you could share that to anyone that would love to give their feedback as well, please do, because the more the merrier when it comes to the feedback. And we'll see you next time on the QB Power Hour.
Thanks, y'all.